Alright, now welcome to this lesson where you're going to be building a really cool HTML5 website. Now the beauty about this website is the fact that you can do pretty much whatever you wanted to do, and previously we needed Flash to do it, but now with HTML5 we can start doing some really great websites that can really engage the end user and also be very exciting for us developers, because we can add all sorts of different artistic flares on there and create some really cool stuff to impress our clients. That's absolutely fantastic. Now what's great about this HTML5 site? Well, when you see it you'll automatically know what's great about it, but there is something that's even better. The fact that it can work on any device, whether that be smartphone or whether that be any other type of media such as a tablet device as well. Also, it can work in older browsers that don't have HTML5 features, that don't understand CSS3, and that even don't have JavaScript enabled. So this site is completely independent, so it's completely safe to implement, and that's the beauty of what I'm about to show you, and that's what's really amazing. So let's take a look and see how this concept works. So for example, I'm going to show you this in a new browser. Okay, this is Firefox 6. It will work in Firefox 4 and above. Also it'll work in, newer browsers such as Google Chrome, Opera, Safari, and Internet Explorer 9. But as I said, it will work in older browsers as well, but it won't work as good as what you see it here. But with all those other newer browsers, it will function exactly the same as you see here. Okay, so you'll be able to see we get this really nice, really cool looking website, and let's click on one of these links up here. Okay, I click and I get this really nice page transition. Okay, so it transitions in the new page. Also, we're using HTML5 video in a completely different way that really engages that end user. So for example, okay, well, you can see that we're using this video sort of like a billboard video. Okay, now when I click on it you won't be able to hear me, but essentially what I'm doing is I'm talking about CartoonSmart, talking about who owns it and so forth. So who owns it? Well, Justin. You'll be able to see the content is changing during the playback. I'm also talking about, what courses that we do. Here's all the different courses, okay? And also, I can access the Google Maps by using the Google Map API. And basically I'm talking about, Atlanta, where, CartoonSmart is essentially based, and I'm actually in Street View right there. Also, I can access a Flickr account, and also I can access a Twitter feed, essentially. Okay, that's really great and really engaging. And also, I can display, any form of HTML content during the playback. So you see there's an image there, a bit of text, and also there is a link right there, so I can display, any sort of HTML. So as you can see, the content of the page changes during the playback of the video. So that's what's really, really great about this, and it really engages people. So we can start using HTML5 video that in a way really engages the end user and is really exciting for the developer. Now let's take a look at the galleries page. Now the gallery is really quite interesting. Basically, I only have the coloured version of the images essentially saved on the hard drive. But where are these grayscale images coming from? Well, these grayscale images are actually being generated by a script. Okay, now this script is using the HTML5 Canvas API, and essentially what it's doing is it's creating a grayscale image, and then it's overlaying the grayscale image over the top of the coloured image, and then when we hover over it, it simply fades out the grayscale image itself. And when you click on an image, it will actually give you the full preview of the thumbnail. So that's what's absolutely fantastic. And then we just have a basic contact page, okay? Nothing special about that. But the really great thing is the fact that this site is clever as well. Okay, so for example, I'm on the contact page. If I click contact, you'll see that it's no longer gonna, fade out and do all the page transition and so forth and fade back in again, because we're already on the page. There's no point doing that. So it's actually clever in the fact that it knows what page we're on and it won't reanimate. Also, when I click on one of these other links, okay, it's gonna, do the page transition, but during the page transition these links all become inactive, okay? So for example, I'm gonna click on the about page and then I'm gonna click on all these other links, okay, really crazily, okay, and you'll see that it ignores all of those clicks. Why? Because we don't want them to, keep replaying and replaying and replaying all the transitions over and over again, because that will be a massive bug, okay, and they will just leave your site straight away, or they'd have to refresh the page, which you definitely don't want them to do. So basically what you are seeing here is a clever HTML5 site that doesn't have, as far as I'm concerned, any bugs of any major concern. It will work in all those new browsers and it will fall back for the older browsers, okay? You won't get the same experience, but you'll get an experience that's pretty close, okay? And the layout and everything else is the same. So let's take a look at what this site will look like in an older browser such as Internet Explorer 8. Okay, here we have our IE tester program opened up, and essentially here is the site, okay? It's a basic site, and obviously there are no HTML5 features, so we don't get those nice page transitions. It just goes straight to the page, but that's fine anyway, okay? And you'll see that this billboard has now changed into a bit of artwork, okay? And we just have a little bit about ourselves, okay? And also on the galleries page, okay, we no longer have, the HTML5 canvas API, so essentially we don't have the grayscale versions of those images, okay, of those thumbnails, but we still do have, the fancy box, okay. Now if JavaScript was disabled, okay, everything will work exactly the same, but this fancy box wouldn't open up. It would just go straight to the actual image itself rather than opening it up in a fancy box. But that's the only difference, folks. But everything else, would work pretty much the same, okay? It would just go straight to the page and display the content. So you can see how this has actually, gracefully undressed itself of all those HTML5 and CSS3 and some of the JavaScript features, and it sort of removed all of that and just undressed itself and basically, giving us the bare bones, okay? So that's what it's actually doing right now. And that's the beauty of this site, okay? And of course, if we can do that, we can also make it work on lower resolution devices such as smartphones and tablets, and that's absolutely fantastic to hear. Essentially, for most web developers are going, well, what about all those smaller devices? Well, don't worry, I'll show you how to do them as well. Fantastic. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to take a look at our project inside of Dreamweaver and just look at, the basics of all the layouts and everything else that we should be doing in our own projects. Okay, so let's take a look inside of Dreamweaver at the basic project. Okay, so if I open up my files palette right now, you'll be able to see that I have a CSS folder with the main.css file in. This is an empty CSS file, okay, and I've just linked it to my HTML5 document, which is the index.html file. Okay, then I have the fancy box folder. Okay, that script is for later on. Essentially that's for the galleries page where you click on an image and you get that nice sort of fancy box over the top of the window. These are the fonts, okay. They're only one font, but they're in all different formats, okay. So that is the fonts folder. We'll be getting onto that very shortly. Images, as I said, I'm not going to be showing you how to design this thing, okay. So I'm providing all the images that is going to be necessary to actually produce this site. And also we have an empty JS folder. Of course, we've got no JavaScript at the moment. And also we have a video folder. It has a .htaccess file for the server, okay, that's for Apache servers and so forth, but we get onto that later on, okay. But don't worry, it's nothing overly complicated. And we have all of the different types of video, okay. We have 2 different videos, and again those 2 different videos are in all different formats, okay. We have an MP4 format, we have a OGG format, and we also have a WebM format. Okay, so essentially I'm providing all the videos for you, but one of them is the page transition, and one of them is the billboard video. Okay, when we're playing and we're saying, you know, Justin owns this and blah blah blah, and all that crazy stuff happens to the left of the video. So that is essentially what is going off there. We should be on the same page right now. Okay, and all I've done is I've just linked that file in, okay, to my index, and that's it. Alright, so let's get going. First of all, I want to style the page. Okay, alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to say body. Okay, and I just want to put in here body, background, okay, URL. Okay, so obviously I'm putting the shorthand property in here. That's very important. I'm going to go to images. Alright, and let's expand this guy right here so we can actually see what we're looking at. And we're going to choose this top.jpg. Then we're going to choose the positioning and so forth. So before I do that, I'm just going to say no repeat so it doesn't tile all over the background. I'm going to center it, so that's on the x-axis, and then I'm going to set it on the y-axis to go to the top, of course. And then what I want to do is I want to set the background color to black. Okay, I'm going to end that right there, end that property. Then I'm going to start a new property, font-family. Okay, font-family, and then we want to choose, if I can see it, that one right there. But I'm going to put Helvetica in front of Arial, okay, because I like Helvetica more. And on Mac OS X operating systems, Helvetica is pre-installed, and on some Windows machines, some people have the Helvetica font installed. I obviously prefer that, so I'm going to put Helvetica first. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to have to choose our font size. Okay, I like a font size of 12 pixels, okay, because that makes it a fairly decent size. And the margin, okay, I will make 0 pixels, okay, to get rid of that little border. Okay, so that allows our content to fill the entire window and get rid of that little invisible force field that stops us from doing that. Okay, so don't forget that little semicolon to end that property. Okay, so save it and preview it. Okay, just like so. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Now it's time to start making this header. Okay, so I'm not going to be using the HTML5 semantic markup. The number one reason is the fact that we are trying to provide support for older browsers. Okay, and that's what I'm aiming to do. So unfortunately I'm going to be using the old div style method. Okay, so we can indent this. Obviously you can use the new style if you want to, but I'm going to use the old one, div id header, like so, like that. Okay, and I like indenting stuff. I like keeping the structure very nice and clean so you can always see the child elements and everything else really easily. Okay, so I have my div element here. I'm going to save that, and I'm going to go and drop this down a line. Okay, and I'm just going to put in some comments here. I'm going to apply a comment. Okay, I like doing this so that I know what stage of the document I'm at. So I'm going to say these CSS rules are for the header. We'll just say these rules, okay, just like that. Alright, okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to point to that header element. Okay, or the element with the ID of header. We want the width to be 100%. Okay, and we want the height to be 70 pixels. Obviously I've got all my dimensions written down. Okay, background, color. Okay, now the first background color that I want to put in, I'll just put in the shorthand background property so that Internet Explorer 6 and so forth doesn't have an issue with it. With this background, we put the old color format in first, and then we put the new color format. So right here, we're going to put this nice grey color in. Okay, and then we put our new background color in with our new color format given to us by CSS3. And I'm going to set this to white, okay, HSLA, hue, saturation, lightness, and alpha. And then I'm going to set the opacity to 0.4, okay. And then I want to add a little bit of a text shadow. As you can see, we do have a little bit of a text shadow right there. So what we're going to do is say text shadow. And by the way, to bring up my menu, I'm pressing Control and Spacebar, or Command and Spacebar on the Mac. You'll also see I'm laying this out a little bit differently. Sometimes we go with the block structure, and other times I just write it in one big line. Okay, you'll see lots of developers write this in one big line. Okay, so that it makes it a little bit tougher to copy the code, but at the end of the day, they can do quite easily. Okay, so we're going to say text shadow. Text shadow, and we are going to set the X, that's going to be 0 pixels, -1 pixels on the Y axis, and we're going to set the color to this nice dark grey. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can move on. Alright, now there is an invisible div right here that's centering all of this content, and this div is called center. So what we need to do is go in here, indent, and create another div element with the ID of center. Okay, and so I can save that now, and we can point to that ID, which is referencing that element. And we want a width of 800 pixels. That's the width of the page, so obviously that's what we want to keep in line with. So I'm going to say width 800 pixels. Okay, the height is going to be 70 pixels. Okay, same as the actual header element itself. Okay, margin left and margin right are auto. So that it centers obviously that div. That's the whole idea of it. Okay, and so now we can save that. Okay, we can go back and hit refresh. Alright, we get this nice header. Okay, and inside the header you obviously see this little div here that's going to be centering up all of that content. Okay, now that I've done that, the next thing to actually do is load in this font that we're using right here. This font is a special font. It's the Railway font. It's not a standard font. So we need to load that in through CSS. So we need to be using the @fontface rule. So I say @font-face. Okay, then we're going to say font family. Okay, now this font family property is essentially a name so that we can reference this font later on. So in these single quotes, okay, I'm just going to end up with a semicolon right there. I'm going to say Railway. Alright, like so. And then I'm going to add in a source property. Okay, and we are essentially going to link to a URL. Okay, now this I'm going to link to the EOT format first. This is for Internet Explorer. That's the first one that I want to load. Okay, I'm going to put a semicolon there. Then I'm going to create another source attribute. Okay, I'm going to put a URL in here, and I'm just going to click OK to that, or I'm going to click cancel. Alright, and what we're going to do is inside of these brackets we're going to put a quotation mark, or the little single quotes, and we're going to put a question mark. And the reason for that is because Internet Explorer will load this file, okay, and then when it gets to here, this character right here, the question mark, is an illegal character. No file name on a Windows PC can have the question mark in. It's totally illegal. So what happens is it stops it from loading, okay, and therefore it just loads that one file. Now the other browsers are actually smart enough to figure out what files they can use, so we can just after that put a comma and then again indent it a little bit, okay, a little bit more, and so then what we can do is, let's just keep it back here, is we can put in a URL again, and we can actually copy this and paste like so. Okay, URL, fonts, railway thin web font, we have the EOT, okay, we're going to load in the WOFF format, WOFF, okay, and we need to set the attribute for that, which is the format as WOFF, okay, which is WOFF, okay. And then what I'm going to do is, instead of having that semicolon at the end there, I'm going to put in another comma indicating that there is another URL. Okay, I'm going to copy that twice. Okay. The next format that we're going to load in is TTF, True Type Font. So, as the format, we say True Type. And the last one is SVG, that's for smartphones and all sorts of stuff like that, and the format attribute is SVG, and then we do put a semicolon at the end of there. Okay, so now that we have that all sorted out, we can start to use this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in a header 1 child element right there. So again, I'm going to indent, say header 1, okay, like that, and this is going to be CartoonSmart. Just remember, don't forget that the first header 1 that's on your page is the most important, okay, so that's the most important header, so make sure that, you know, for SEO reasons you put something of great relevance in that header 1, and don't make it too long either. Okay, so now that we've done that, I can save it, go back to main CSS, I can point to the header 1 element, okay, and we want to set the font family to railway. Okay, again, referencing that font that we've imported earlier. And then what we want to do, okay, font railway, is set the size. So the font size I want to be 25 pixels. Okay, the next thing is the color. I want that to be white. Alright, and then what we're going to do is we're going to set the padding top, okay, so that we're centering this up a little bit. The padding top is 20 pixels. The margin is 0 pixels because there is a little margin on there, so we're going to take that off, like so. Then we're going to tell it to float to the left. Then we're going to move it across a little bit, so we're going to say margin right. Okay, I want the margin right to be 10 pixels. And margin left. Okay, which is pushing it across, wants to be 40 pixels. Just like that. Okay. So we're adding a little margin to the right because we want to sort of push this navigation that we're going to be creating a little bit along, so we're pushing it across, and also we're pushing on that center, okay, because the center is this is not quite centered, okay, the image is not quite centered as well, so it sort of makes an offset. So what we have to do is compensate by adding a bit of a margin on there. Okay, so I can save that, and let's just preview how that looks. Okay, that's looking pretty good right there, and I have to say Firefox is very good at that anti-aliasing. Looks really great. Okay, so let's get things really rolling. Okay, then what we want to do is we want to add in an unordered list. Okay, this is going to be our menu. Alright, so we have our unordered list. Give this an ID of nav, like so. And again, we want to indent in there to show that we are dealing with a child. Okay, and we want to add a list item. Okay, and what we're going to do inside of there is we're going to add an anchor tag. href at the moment we'll just leave it as nothing. Okay, but we will get on to dealing with that in just a second. But then what we're going to do is put home, about, and so forth in there. So I'm going to copy that. There's home, about, gallery, contact. And contact. Perfect. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save that, and now we need to add in a bit of CSS to get this to work properly. Okay, first of all we're going to point to the nav, which is the main element itself. Okay, nav, obviously we want the color of that to be white. Alright, the list style type, okay, we want to get rid of the little, you know, bullet points, so that's how you get rid of them. List style type none, margin 0 pixels, and also the padding 0 pixels. Okay, that's great. So the color of the text is white, the list style type, that gets rid of the bullet points. Also there is margin and padding that's actually by default placed on an unordered list, so we want to get rid of those so that it doesn't cause any future problems. Okay, then we want to point to that element, okay, again by using its ID, and then pointing to its children, okay, but only the list item children. Obviously we want to display these as a block, okay, like so, and we want to tell it to float to the left. Whoops. Like so. Okay, so now that we've done that, all of these should essentially stack up together. Okay, there they go, they're all stacking up together. So now we need to sort of clean this up a little bit. Okay, what we shall do is first of all sort out the links themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to my page, press Ctrl J, get up my properties, go to links, make the color. Actually, what I'm going to do before I do anything is I'm just going to, in every box, put a hash, and then I'm going to change the color. Then you'll see it changes the format of the color when I do that. So that's white. What we're going to do is say text decoration never underline, and that's going to be white. The rollover, the hover essentially, is going to be this dark grey, and all the others is just going to be white. Okay, and I can cut that out, save this, paste, and let's clean this up. Get rid of that text decoration, none. Okay, on each one of these properties, because what we're going to do is just save a little space and time in the coding. Like so. Okay, like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say A, okay, text decoration none, like that. Alright, so now everything is set up. We also want to add on a little bit of a text shadow. Okay, when we hover over this, okay, obviously we're getting a little bit of a colour in it at the moment. If I was to save it, okay, but when we hover over it here, you'll be able to see that we get this nice white indent. Okay, now that again is a text shadow, so when we hover over it we get a different text shadow. So when we say a hover, okay, we want to now put in a text shadow. Okay, text shadow, 0 pixels on the x-axis, 1 pixel on the y-axis, and we want to set the color to white. Okay, get rid of that little space right there. Okay, so now that we have done that, we should get a little bit more stylish links. Okay, there we go, looking good. But now we need to sort out the size. Okay, the size is not up to code. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wrap this text up in the paragraph element. So I'm going to wrap that up in the P, wrap P, okay, and save that. Alright, now I'm going to point to the nav element again, but I'm going to grab all those paragraph elements, okay, and inside of there I'm going to set the margin obviously to 0 pixels because the paragraphs by default have margins and stuff on them, so I'm going to say margin 0 pixel, padding 0 pixels. Okay, and what we're also going to do is we are going to point to the nav element again, look at all the list items and grab all the anchor tags. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to set the font size to 16 pixels. Okay, we obviously want to display this as a block level element. Okay, a block level element. The width of each one of these list items is going to be 130 pixels. The height is going to be 70 pixels. The text align is going to be centered so that it centers up that text inside of each list item. Border left, alright, obviously with the border right here, you'll be able to see that we have this, really nice little dotted line right there. So that's what we want to do here. Okay, text align centered, yeah, that's fine. border left. Border left. First of all, what we're going to do is set the color. The style is dotted. And also the width is 2 pixels, okay? Right. So now that we have done that, we can save this and just give it a quick preview to see where we're at. Okay, there we go. Not too shabby, okay? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to essentially point to the nav element again, look at the list items, look at the anchor tags, and look at the paragraphs, okay? So I'm targeting this specifically, okay? And then I'm saying padding top is 25 pixels. Okay, so let's save that, hit refresh. Okay, and now you'll see that it's had a little bit of padding on there, so it's centered those up nicely. And as I said, I've been playing around with these settings for quite a while, so don't expect to get this sort of stuff straight away. Also, what I'm going to do is on this very last list item, I'm going to add on a class, okay, of last. And then I'm going to go down to a new line, point to that class of last, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the border right, so the border right is going to be white, of course. It's going to be pretty much exactly the same as this, so that we just get that last dotted line on there. And there you go. Okay, you saw that dotted line come in. Okay. Next thing to do is build the page. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of collapse all of this so that we don't have to see it. And then I'm going to go down on a new line. Should be able to. Yeah, that's okay. Alright, and in here we're going to add on new CSS comment. Okay. These styles are for the main pages. Okay. Right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to actually start styling the development of main. So what I'm going to do is right here, you can see this is the header, so I can collapse that, which keeps everything nice and organized. Div id main. Okay, I'm going to save that. Okay, now the main, let's point to that id. The main, okay, background, we want to set the URL to the background image, which is this fallback JPEG, okay, and that's going to be no repeat. It's going to be positioned to the left on the X and the top on the Y, as you know, X before Y. And then what we're going to do is set the width to 800 pixels. That's the size of the image, 800 pixels by a height of 500 pixels. Okay. Margin left and margin right need to be set to auto. so, so that it centers up the main div. And we also want a little bit of a margin top, so I'll just save it as it is now and just explain why we want that little bit of a margin on the top. So obviously it's centered it up, but you'll see that it's just cutting over that image. So what I'm going to do is set the margin top to be 50 pixels, just like that, and then that will push it down a little bit. Perfect. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we are going to add in another div element, another child element inside of here, and this is going to be our div with an ID of container. Alright. Okay. Like so. If I save that, let's point to that ID, and we want the margin left to be 45 pixels. Okay, so it's pushing it across some, and I'll explain why in just a second. Margin top 57 pixels. The width, okay, is 709 pixels. Height, 389 pixels. Position, absolute. And if anything overflows it, then we want it to be hidden. And the reason for that is because all the different pages are going to be put inside of there, okay? And the size of the pages is 709 by 389, okay? So if I actually save this, and let's just preview it, okay, you won't be able to see it, but when I go into Firebug, or in fact, you know what we'll do, we'll just add on a background color. Of anything you want, we'll just make it black. Okay, and hit refresh. Okay, so now you'll be able to see that's the actual container, and each page is going to be that size, and whenever we click on one of these links, we actually want it to link to that page, okay, and then that page will show straight away. So this page will work without any JavaScript or anything like that. It'll work at a basic level, okay, and that's essentially what we're doing. We're just setting the foundation, okay, because you never see them build a skyscraper from the top down. We always start from the bottom up. So at the moment we're just building the foundation. So we're getting rid of this background right now because we don't need it, and we're going to be adding in a few pages. Okay, so what we're going to do is put inside of this container all the pages that we're going to need. So div, okay, and this div is going to have an ID that's home. That's very important for JavaScript and also CSS as well. Class, okay, we're going to add a class of page on there, right, a class of page, and we'll just leave it like that for now. We will make some more adjustments in lesson 2 to the HTML, but nothing that would, stop it from working normally. So div ID home class page. Okay, now each one of these pages needs to be the right size. So I'm going to say page. Okay, and the page we're going to just set the width and the height. Again, basically what we can do is just copy this and paste it. Okay, and then we can create all the other pages as well. We have home, and again 1, 2, 3. We have this page. This one's going to be about. This one is going to be gallery. home, about, gallery, and contact. And now we can actually tell these links to link to those certain elements via their ID. So what I do is I say hash, and then I say home for this one. Notice how they're all lowercase here, and they're all lowercase here. Very important. About, gallery, and contact. Okay, so now what we can do is add in some text here. So I'll say home for this one. Just copy that real quick. Just to demonstrate how this works without JavaScript. Okay, so hit refresh. You got home, you got about, you got gallery, you got contact. Home, about, gallery, contact. Okay, so that is what it is all about. Okay, so that's actually working without any need for JavaScript. Okay, and we're not going to interfere with that with JavaScript in non-supporting browsers. Okay. But we'll get onto that later on anyway. So we have our home, we have our about, we have a gallery, and contact. Perfect. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be positioning up all sorts of stuff. Okay. First of all, I'm going to be putting in some home text. Okay. This is just going to be a paragraph. Now I've already got this sort of stuff pre-done. I don't see the point in you sitting here watching me do this stuff. I mean, the stuff that I've done so far, okay, so you get the basic structure, but right now I'm going to put in this paragraph with an ID of home text, and here is the styling. Paste that in, save both of those. Okay, and what that's doing is it's essentially just creating a load of gobbledygook that's positioned like that. Dead easy, dead simple. Okay, next thing what we're going to do is we're going to put in an image into there. Okay, that's that little CartoonSmart image right there. Okay, now another good little tip for you guys is always put your alt tags in, okay, or alt attribute should I say, on your images, okay, and make sure that it's relevant, okay, because if somebody's partially sighted and they have the narrator switched on, when they hover over that image, the narrator will actually read out the alt attribute. Also, the narrator will also read out the title attribute. Okay, but we'll get onto that later on. At the moment, we're not going to put any title attributes in there, but that's something that we're going to use later on. So, image, source, it's just going to be that little side picture, and what we want to do is we have essentially all we're doing here is we're going to point to this div, the main home, which is the parent, and we're going to tell that image to float to the right. Okay, so at the moment, all it's going to do is sit over there. We don't want that. That's not good. So what we want to do is tell it to point to it. Okay, point to that home, the parent, and then point to the image inside the parent and tell it to float to the right. So there we go. Absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. Now we're going to move on to the about page. Okay, at the moment we've got nothing on the about page, so let's take a look at that. The about page. Okay, copy this code in. Right, so here's the about page. We're going to indent that a little bit, again keeping that really nice good looking structure to it. Okay, so we're adding in a class here of left, okay, a div with a class of left, and we just got two pieces, or two paragraphs should I say, and we have a closing div. Okay, So what we're going to do here is we're going to style this up. Essentially, if we go to the About page over here, you'll be able to see that comes up, okay, and right here there'll be the left paragraph, okay, right here. So you can't see it, but the div element is there. And you can see it even more clearly in non-supporting browsers of HTML5 like Internet Explorer 8. You saw there was loads and loads of text here, and there was just a picture here. Okay, that's what we're doing. Okay, we're creating the baseline. This is actually the HTML5 part in there. So ignore the HTML5. We're just creating the baseline. We're creating the foundation for which we can add and bolt on the HTML5 features. So with this left div, okay, I'm going to position this up. Okay, I'm going to set the width, the height, the margin left, so I'm pushing it away a little bit, the margin top, so I'm pushing it down a little bit. The position should be set to absolute so that the margin top doesn't actually overflow outside of its parent. Okay, that's quite important. Just you'll be able to see what I mean when I cut this out. Okay, and I save all this and I go back here, refresh. Okay, you'll be able to see, okay, this is not too bad. This is the text, but it really hasn't put much of a influence on there. So hit refresh and you'll be able to see that that will style it up correctly. And now we can add our billboard in here. So what we're going to do is save that CSS file. And then just below that, we're going to create a div element with the ID of billboard. Okay. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in. This is the last little bit, like so. Okay, so I'm creating a div with the ID of billboard. Okay. Now this billboard, okay, I'm going to position it. So I'm just going to save that. And I'm going to paste in the rule for it. So, okay, so billboard right here, I'm essentially setting the background image as the billboard image. Okay, so this is what we get. I've positioned it all up, and here's the image. Okay. Now we've also created a child element inside of there. This child element, when I can find it again. Okay, this child element is the placeholder element. Okay, now the placeholder is essentially going to be just over the billboard. Okay, so let me copy these styles for that and paste them in. And you'll be able to see I put a border radius in here. And what I'm going to do is just put on a background colour so you can see how I've done it. Okay, so background, put in a little colour. Okay, so the billboard is obviously this main div, and it has the billboard background picture, and that is controlled by CSS right here, as you can see. Then I have my placeholder, which is a child element of the billboard. And what I'm doing now is I'm just basically, I've set the position and the width and the height to be exactly right. And then I've just put a little border radius on there. So if you actually take a look, border radius right there. And don't forget your WebKit and Moz versions of that. Border radius 7 pixels, okay? And that's made a really nice rounded corner. Okay. And so I'm just going to get rid of the background color now because we don't need it. Okay, hit refresh, and there we go. Okay, so the about page is done. Again, dead basic, a little paragraph that's explaining, you know, who we are, da da da. Obviously it isn't, but that's what we will be doing, and just a basic image, okay? And we'll deal with those later on. Next, we're going to move on to the galleries page. The galleries page, again, is an unordered list. So if you actually take a look at this, go to gallery. Okay. The gallery is just an unordered list of images, okay? And we only have the colored version of these images. We don't have the black and white version of the images. So the black and white versions of these images are actually being generated by a script, so we don't need to worry about those at the moment. We don't need to worry about them at all. We just need to essentially create list items that have the correct width and height, that are positioned in space correctly, or each list item, okay. And also we're going to create a link to the image, okay, to the larger scale image, okay. And that's when Fancy Box takes over. But we're not going to actually, do the Fancy Box at the moment, okay. We're just going to link to the larger scale image. So what I am going to do is also, just real quick, add on a little CSS rule for the placeholder image. So I'm going to paste that in there, save it, okay. What that's going to do is when I go to the about, okay, it's just going to shove that picture down a little bit because it's too close. There we go, that looks nice. Okay, go back to gallery, let's crack on with it. The first thing we want to do is get our code for that, okay. So I'm just going to copy that code because that's just going to take forever to type up. Well, not forever, but it'll take a fair while. I'll explain what's going off here. Okay, all that's going off here is we're creating an unordered list. We're giving it a class of gallery thumbs. That's very important so that we can point to that, okay, and refer to that. And each list item is containing an image, okay, so we have 9 list items, of course, okay. So each list item is containing an image, and the link is actually linking to the larger picture of the thumbnail. That's all, okay, that's all we're doing right there. We're just creating a list item, and inside that list item we're creating an anchor tag, okay, or a link to the larger image of the thumbnail, and we're actually putting the image in itself of the thumbnail. So that's all that's happening there. So if we save it right now and just preview that, you'll see that we get bullet points, everything else, so we need to sort that out straight away. So I'm first going to point to this unordered list, okay, by pointing to that class right there. Okay, so I'm in my galleries page, my unordered list class gallery thumb, so I'm pointing to this unordered list, the parent of all the list items. List style type none, that gets rid of the bullet points right here. Display block, again we want to display them obviously as a block. Float to the left, okay, that's important. The margin and the padding is also gone, okay. As just by default, the unordered lists, they have paddings and margins on there, so we really want to get rid of those before continuing. So let's save it and hit refresh and see what we get. Okay, so this is looking pretty good, but we now need to sort out these list items themselves. So again, we're going to point to the class and then point to the list items themselves. So again, I'm pointing to the list, unordered list item, which is the parent. Then I'm pointing to the list item itself. Then I'm telling each list item display as a block. Float to the left, so they'll all stack up next to each other. The width and the height is set to the same width and height of each image. Okay, each one of those images is the same width and height. Margin left, okay, what that's going to do is it's going to add that little margin right there to make sure, we're getting a nice spacing between these, and I, fiddled around with that quite a bit. The margin top is the spacing at the top of each list item right there, okay, as you can see, it's done a nice job. Then we are adding a box shadow, okay, don't forget the Moz and the WebKit version of that property. Essentially we're just adding that little drop shadow in there. But again, if CSS3 drop shadow isn't there, it's no big deal anyway. So let's save this, refresh, and there you go. Okay, so we've essentially styled up our list items, okay? And then, you know, we've got the contact page. And to be quite honest with you, I don't think I need to go through that with you. It's just a basic form that I'm putting in there, nothing special. I'm making 2 fields required though. So again, I'm going to indent that and paste it in there. Okay, 2 of these fields are required, the name field and the email field, okay? And obviously we are doing it like this, okay? But then what we're doing is we're styling it up, okay? So I've got all the styles here pre-done, because as I say, we want to get onto the fun stuff. This stuff is fairly easy. It's just a bit of CSS styling it up. That's all it is. That's all it is. The input fields, okay, these are your input fields, okay. Then we have the text area. The text area is styled the same as the input, but they are different elements. You have to remember that. So this text area is a text area, not an input field. Only these are the input fields. And then finally we have a little bit of styling on the button. And the contact form, you know, we put a width and a height on there. We've told it to align in the center and so forth. So that's just going to align it all up. Okay, so there you go. A basic contact form. So we've got home, about, gallery, and contact, all working without JavaScript. That's the ultimate goal that we've got out of this, is the fact that we've created a site at the moment that does not require JavaScript running or any features of HTML5, and so therefore we've created a baseline project, okay? And that's where we have to start. There is your foundation, and now you can start building on top of that. Now there will be a few little minor adjustments here and there, but there's going to be nothing major, okay? There's going to be absolutely nothing major. So what I suggest to you is that you start out at this level, and then once you understand this project, okay, all we're doing at the moment is just doing a bit of CSS. I mean, there is no JavaScript whatsoever. Okay, if we click one of these, it'll just take us to the larger, picture of that thumbnail. That's all it's doing, okay? And so, you know, obviously I've already styled this all up and done it all for you, okay? But the point about it is, I think by now we should all know how to build a basic website in CSS and basic HTML. And so what I'm going to be doing now is I'm going to be adding on those HTML5 and, you know, all that JavaScript business all inside of there. I'm going to bolt that all on. I'm going to create the amazing experience, okay? And right at the end of the course, I'm going to be showing you how to, you know, make this site stylable on lower resolution devices as well, again using a bit of that CSS3 in there. So you probably haven't learned anything from this lesson, okay? Maybe you have, but I don't think you would have as possibly experienced developer as you are. We're just creating a very basic site, nothing major, but we're just making sure that we're creating a site that does work without JavaScript and HTML5 and even CSS3. Okay, it doesn't need CSS3 to work properly, so that's basically all we need to do. That's all we need to do is that, okay? And then the next step is adding on those features, as I said. So I hope you have at least enjoyed the lesson, okay, and got a feel for the project. So now we have created the foundation. Let's create the skyscraper.